Okay. So what? So you mentioned the ogres. I actually kind of want to know more about the ogres. You mentioned that they seem to be a very big part of this world. Is that true?
Yes. Frunk was just your everyday average ogre that was just bigger, uglier, and dumber. Just absolutely insanely stupid. Um, he actually started as a D&D 3.5 campaign where my dad and I were like, hey, let's do something crazy and fun and just play this one monster in a campaign. I'm like, sure. So we rolled up a fourth level barbarian ogre, and he had a 1 appearance, which is something my dad came up with, the appearance stat, a 4 charisma, and a 4 intelligence. So by D&D standard rules, I believe you need a 3 or a 4 intelligence just to be able to speak. Something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So he was barely able to speak, and he had his own kind of dialect that we have eventually come to call the Frunkian dialect.
I
Um,
like that name.
and he was originally just no big deal, and he was very ambitious. That is one thing that set him apart. But he wanted to one by one collect an army of enemies that he scared into serving him, and then take over the world. That was his whole idea. He was gonna scare slash disgust goblins and orcs into joining him, and then take over the world. Well, that didn't happen. He got about 13. Um, but he did get like insanely powerful. He was well beyond epic level by the time the campaign was done. He the I am currently writing another book that I kind of abandoned, but I sort of want to go back to it, where it was the saga of Frunk. It was all of the campaign just written down in a story uh yeah, in the version of a story. And the last little bit, he got sent to hell by a wizard that was supposed to make him a castle. The wizard's like, hey, just step through this door and you'll see your new throne room. And Frunk's like, okay. So he walks through the door and he falls into a pit in hell instead.
Oh, jeez.
So he gets pissed off and he gathers 5 of his most loyal companions, and they break out of hell. They
Wow.
forcibly fight their way back from hell, and then the 6 of them take back his castle by force. Now, we're not talking a castle guarded by one lone puny wizard. We're talking a castle guarded by, full fortifications, a lone puny wizard that's like 15th level, and literally an army of hill giants and bugbears and orcs and everything else that wizard could steal from Frunk's army. And yeah, they came down. They lost that fight so easily, and Frunk took his castle back and ruled it since then. But the big thing that came from that incident is Frunk took a territory that Klamas and Inferno had decided collectively would, or had mutually decided would be left abandoned. Because if it wasn't, the treaty between the two would break, and Inferno would be free to send his minions back through a rift that was nearby. Well, Frunk had an answer for this. He'd just kill all the demons. So I think it's once every 5 years or so, Frunk would set his army upon the rift and just kill every demon that came out.
Jeez.
And he ruled like that for I don't know how long, but he lived to be over 100. Partly because of his sword. His sword, Boulder Fire, I'll go into more detail later, but Boulder Fire, one of the main attractions of that sword was that it is said that whenever someone is carrying the sword, they don't even have to be wielding it, but just carrying it, they cannot die from anything, literally anything.
Huh.
So
well,
he lived.
That explains why he beat him.
Yeah, that's why he lived so long. How old he was, all that, and he was only defeated when he was disarmed, and then it was still kind of difficult because Frunk's still a badass.
Right. So, I mean, who were the others that fought with him?
Man. Let's see. There was Sventergick, which I believe was half Latin and half Draconic from D&D 3.5, so I should probably change his name, since somebody else came up with half his name. And then there was Ragasha. Sventergick was an orc fighter. Ragasha was a goblin cleric. There's Rudu, the kobold wizard, who was great. I mean, Rudu could turn into literally any dragon. He had a deal with Tiamat that made him insanely powerful. Not only was he a very talented spellcaster, but he could turn into literally any dragon. And then there was Flea the Headhunter. There's a long story just with Flea, but I will shorten it. He was originally a terrible, terrible character. If you're familiar with D&D statistics, the highest statistic he had was a 10, and that was dexterity.
Oh, wow.
And so he became a rogue, naturally, because that's what you do when you only have a 10 dexterity and below and everything else.
Right.
And I expected him to die really fast, but he never did. He never died.
Wow.
And it was mostly due to him hiding from combat. But
okay.
he just leveled up from observation, I guess. But and then later on, he killed an avatar of Loth. He just got lucky and criticaled on an avatar of Loth on his first attack of the fight, and it was right as the avatar was near death. And so Loth is like, "Oh, I'm impressed with you," and she blessed him. And you don't get a blessing from Loth without a curse.
Right.
So his soul was damned, but he was imbued with great powers. And he slowly became more spidery-like. I'll have to attach an image somehow to the file. I have a picture of Flea.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's not one of your favorite images, Smunchy, but it's definitely good concept art, as you pointed out.
Right, yeah. No, well, it'll be great to see the character for sure.
But yeah, and then moving on from Flea, there was let's see. Actually I think that was it by the end. Most of the other ones just died. and weren't able to be salvaged or resurrected or whatever you want to call it.
Salvage. Hey, I mean, if you're an ogre, I guess it makes sense. So, I mean, where are the ogres from?
That is not established where Frunk is from, but
Okay.
Frunk bought a plot of land in what is called ruined Rome, because Rome was that territory that was supposed to never come back.
Oh, that's right.
So, and Rome is roughly where it would be in the real world.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's talk about that territory. Let's talk a little bit about like what's in it. What does it look like? What would I experience if I were to go there?
If you were to go there, you would experience, since I didn't even try to put all the same terrain in the same places, because I don't feel like working that hard.
Okay.
That is the flat out reason why I did it. Also, I wanted it to be different. I mean, it's got to be different somehow. If it's shaped the same way as the real world, it's called the real world terms. It's got to be different somehow, right?
Sure. Yeah. I guess you're right, though. I mean, yeah, it would need to be somewhat different. So, I mean, what would I experience though here?
There's similar to the Midwest of the United States, and there's a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of low elevation hills, so not like really big hills, not like the foothills of the mountains, but like just rolling hills with prairie and then there's a really big river. This is actually the next map that I plan on making on Incarnate. I have a hand-drawn map of it, which I should probably be looking at as I describe this to you. But it has disappeared from my wall. I don't know where I put it, so I will just describe it from memory. It has a large river that runs through, and there are two huge mountains, and I'm talking like hundreds of miles across. Because there's several mountains in this world that are absolutely enormous. And these particular two are where Frunk oriented his castle.
Okay.
On one of those mountains overlooking the river. I was kind of thinking, I think I drew this map about the time that the Fellowship of the Ring came out, because I have a feeling that I was thinking that, the shot where they go between the two large cliffs with the two figures carved out of them.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was a great scene too.
Yeah, I was thinking that, only a castle perched atop one of those cliffs. And Frunk had a thing for luxury. So if you were to enter any of his castles or his palaces or any of his buildings anywhere near him, there would be a lot of statues of precious stones carved in Frunk's image. There would be tapestries of Frunk doing battle against demons and Frunk killing an ice deity that was trying to come back to life, and Frunk doing this, Frunk doing that. It's all about Frunk. Everywhere you go, even if the place has nothing to do with Frunk, like a hospital, you got a bust of Frunk. And then next to that, you got a statue of Frunk stabbing a deity in the face. It's like everything is Frunk.
Very proud.
And then there were the other ogres. So the Frunkian land controlled most ogres. But there was one free civilization of ogres that earned its title as free because I forget it was I recently named him Balor not after Tolkien's Balor or D&D's Balor. I'm talking the old school Celtic / Irish or whatever it was. Formian, is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not actually sure.
Anyway, that's where Tolkien got Balor from.
Okay.
He was the fiercest of the Formians or Fomorians or something like that, and he was a war chief. He was the war chief of that race, and so Balor in this game is Frunk's brother, his little brother, I believe. Yeah, his little brother, not his older brother. And he was always a very big supporter of Frunk in battles. So Frunk's like, okay, you support me anyway, and you're my little brother, and you're good at your job of supporting me, so I'll let you stay independent, sorta. And that breed of ogres is actually where the first Oni comes from.
Okay, what is that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know that much about Oni in real world mythology. I did some research when I based it off my own. When I worked up my own Oni. Mm-hmm. But the first Oni was Blua, who was Balor's. Let me get this right. Yeah, illegitimate daughter. And normally, because these are ogres and they're not real civilized, what would happen to an illegitimate daughter of the main chieftain is it would get thrown off the cliff.
Oh, wow.
So that did not happen though, because Blua, that's the name. Blua was weird looking, and the person who delivered Blua was struck by her beauty and by her strange appearance. Like she was bright blue and red mottled skin, and she had a stub of a horn in the middle of her forehead. And she was really fat, and she had a tiny head.
Okay.
That's how she was described. And apparently that's very attractive to ogres.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, hey.
So
that's the thing, you know?
Yep. So the person who delivered Blua called for a fortune teller, who just so happened to be a very famous genie in disguise named Reyna. And she foretold that Blua, if she were allowed to live, could give rise to a line of ogres that would take over control of the Council of Power. Which is a big deal. They're the most powerful empire in the world. They control just they have their hands in just about every other empire / kingdom / anything.
Are they ogres?
They are not ogres. In fact, Frunk
Okay.
was turned down to rule after he killed the emperor, because normally that would allow him to rule, but he was turned down because he's too stupid. This did not sit well with him, and it ultimately led to him being beheaded. But
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so this was way before then. Blua was raised in protection instead of being thrown off the cliff, and was eventually married off to Frunk, which is kind of weird, but hey, I mean, real world royal families weren't any nicer.
Right. Well, it's very true.
I modeled the line of the Frunkians after the ideas of real world royalty. So there's a lot of inbreeding and disabilities and stereotypes that the Frunkians try to hammer into all of their minions and people that are descended from them.
So all these Council of Power, I mean, where did they come? Like, where did they live? What were they like a mixture of races?
The Council of Power, the idea was, it was started in the beginning of the First World by the remaining 4, I think, peasants of power: peasant of healing, strength, nature, and death. They're like infinitely powerful beings. They are born directly of Klamas.
Oh, okay.
And they started the Council of Power as like this entity of neutrality that would control as much of the world as possible and keep a neutral theme to the world. Unfortunately, that's not what ended up happening. For most of the Council of Power's history, it was corrupted either by good or evil. So it wasn't neutral for most of its history, even though that was the whole point. So basically, how it worked was, if you got to a certain level of power, you were asked to join the Council of Power as a sort of vassal, and you were gifted. You were gifted land. You were gifted money. You were gifted an army, but you had to serve the emperor. And,
okay.
Somebody made the stupid decision of enacting a law that allowed for anybody who killed someone higher up than them got that position. So it became one of the most chaotic and just crazy empires in the world, because you had all these power-hungry kings that were vying for control with each other. And the only 2 instances in all of the Council of Power's history that they all met at once were both to turn down members of the Frunkian court as emperor. The first time it was to turn down Frunk, and the second time it was to turn down Blurp, who was Frunk's, I think, grandson.
Okay.
Blurp is one of my favorite characters as well. He was so much like Frunk, so much different from his father, who was weak. He was disabled physically, but he was brilliant and cowardly. So all 4 traits are things that the Frunkians hold in high disdain. And so when he was finally killed by his wife and son, um, there he was mutilated, and every year there's a Onam Day where they burn the effigy of Onam and eat eat enemies and other unpleasant things.
Oh wow.
And his name has turned into an insult. So, like, if someone doesn't like what you're doing, they'll say, "Oh, you're just being an Onam." So it was kind of interesting that Blurp came from him, because Blurp is just like his grandfather, and yeah.
Huh. Well, that
But
was a fun little fact.
yeah. So if y'all enjoyed hearing from us, be sure to tune in next time. Actually, I guess you won't be tuning in because we're not doing this live, but we will be posting more videos of this. I'm hoping, maybe.
Most definitely.
Yeah. This is great fun, and I hope everybody enjoys it as much as I did. So, on that note, I will say good night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.